This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, global stock markets gained for a second day. They were fueled by increased optimism about economic stimulus and a global recovery. Markets also saw retail investors retreating from GameStop and their newfound interest in silver. Now, MSCI's index of emerging market stocks jumped 1.3% on the day, and that was on strength in Chinese and Hong Kong stocks. Analysts say optimism over an economic recovery in 2021 suddenly helped to drive foreign net inflows of about $53.5 billion into emerging market stocks today. Now, also coming up on the show. President Cyril Ramaphosa banks on the mining sector to boost South Africa's economy. China calls for closer trade ties with Joe Biden's administration. And an eco-friendly entrepreneur uses an unlikely source to help build a cleaner Kenya. Now, the annual Investing in African Mining Indaba kicked off on Tuesday on a virtual platform. The Indaba, normally held in Cape Town, South Africa, is the largest gathering of the industry globally. But because of COVID-19, the yearly gathering is being held online for the second time. Here's Sumitra Naidu with more.
It's been a difficult period for the mining industry. Mining houses in South Africa are open again after a hard lockdown last year, but operations have been limited due to COVID. In his opening address, President Cyril Ramaphosa called on the industry to assist.
We must continue to ensure that all workers in our workplaces have access to the personal protective equipment that they need. I'm immensely encouraged by the positive sentiment from the mining industry, as expressed by the Minerals Council, towards the vaccine rollout. Mining companies are well placed to support the vaccine program, given their experience with managing tuberculosis and HIV amongst their employees.
Mining companies heeded the call, agreeing to vaccinate 3 million people.
If you look at the challenges that the industry has had to deal with right at the outset of this pandemic, the amount of work we did with the DMRE, with the unions, to ensure that we put adequate and sufficient protocols in place. Mining was able to really operate at probably lower levels than the official government stated levels.
While mining has suffered across the world, countries that depend on it were particularly hard hit. Mining in South Africa contributes 8% to GDP, a far cry from the 20% it once contributed. But despite the recent challenges with COVID, the local mining sector showed resilience.
The industry has done exceptionally well in actually making sure that the volumes that were required to be mined, but also under the critical logistic constraints that we were faced with, a lot of the mining companies, they have been able to demonstrate value while also minimizing the number of people that by and large they would have had to retrench to be able to continue bringing this value.
This year's Indaba will be of particular importance as industry players gather online to discuss COVID in mining and the way forward. Aptly themed Resilience and Regrowth, adopting the new mindset for African mining. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund has cut South Africa's economic growth forecast due to the impact of continuing lockdown restrictions and the slow pace of acquiring COVID-19 vaccines. In its January updated World Economic Outlook, the IMF says that South Africa's gross domestic product will grow by 2.8% this year, and that's compared to the 3% which it forecast last year. Here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola with more.
Some of the uncertainty around the procurement of vaccines has been dealt with the announcement of several deals signed with vaccine producers. But there is a broader challenge that's raised its head: vaccine hesitancy, people not wanting to be vaccinated.
I think we need to do a bunch of things which are quite challenging. We need an education program. We need to procure a whole bunch of supplies in addition to vaccines, so things like syringes and the like, personal protective equipment. We need to train a number of the people who are going to be delivering the vaccinations, because the existing quanta of healthcare professional is not sufficient to do it. And then we need to establish the procedures and the mechanisms for rolling it out.
The arrival of the first batch of vaccines in the country is seen as positive news, but many industries are suffering.
The positive aspects which we are saying is giving in confidence to the industry in terms of reopening. You need to realize that the industry has been operating below capacity because of the following up of the regulations with regard to lockdown measures. And as a result, that has actually affected production patterns in the industry, especially the entire manufacturing sector, and also looking at also the metals and engineering sector per se.
The short-term economic prospects remain challenging and also need to be dealt with.
The economy, if we are not able to attract investment both domestically and globally, because South Africa is, the more we fail to convince the world that we'll roll this vaccine out efficiently, the less we'll be able to attract investment. So we become less of a compelling investment case relative to other emerging markets.
The medium-term scenario includes the view that the South African economy was under pressure before the virus arrived in 2020.
If we don't roll out the vaccine efficiently, we will get these regular lockdowns, which impact negatively on the economy. So these disruptions aren't helping anyone. So the implication is that we won't be able to, to collect enough revenues for the economy to sustain itself. So we will need to go borrow. We need to tap into the global market to borrow and keep the economy afloat.
Investors and business people are looking for three things from the South African government. Firstly, they want policy certainty. Then they want those economic plans that have been unveiled to be implemented. And thirdly, they want to understand what's happening in terms of dealing with the coronavirus. I'm Angelo Koppler for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And heading to South Sudan now, the country's central bank says it will auction $2 million in the foreign exchange market every week in order to try and stabilize its economy. Now, the bank also says the move aims to prevent the further depreciation of South Sudan's currency against the US dollar. Here's CGTN's Patrick Oyet with more.
South Sudan Central Bank says it is providing $2 million every week to foreign exchange bureaus in the country. The country's economy depends on revenues from the sale of oil. A global fall in oil prices has created shortage of US dollars in South Sudan. Inflation followed, pushing the prices of basic goods beyond the reach of many. But South Sudan Central Bank says it is now also providing hard currency to commercial banks.
The objective is for us really to stabilize the economy, to stabilize the exchange rate, so that the benefit goes to the general public in the form of a stable exchange rate, because a stable exchange rate will also bring stable prices.
The Bank of South Sudan began auctioning US dollars to forex bureaus in December last year. One economic analyst says the availability of hard currency in the market is already having a positive impact on the economy. He, however, urges South Sudan's government to also stabilize the local currency, the South Sudanese pound.
I think the most important thing to revive the economic situation is production. We have to find a way to get value for the SSP. The SSP right now doesn't have value because there's no production. So to sustain this, the government has to implement not only monetary policies, such as allowing hard currency to be in the market, but they need to have strict fiscal currencies to make sure they're getting this hard currency through other means, through non-oil revenue, through collection of taxes, through collection of customs. This will allow it to get the currency, the hard currency, and then sell it to the market to control the prices. But also they need to have trade policy to promote productivity.
The Central Bank of South Sudan says most goods in the country are imported. South Sudan's Apex Bank says it is also providing hard currency to businesses that provide essential services such as electricity to enable those businesses import goods and equipment needed for their operations. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Well, let's take a look at other corporate headlines today. MTN Group has appointed Citigroup and Standard Bank Group to advise on a sale and leaseback of some of the carrier's South African telecom towers. Now, Africa's largest mobile phone company by sales is reportedly looking to raise between $333 million and $666 million from the deal. The Johannesburg-based firm will seek to attract interest from specialist tower companies who are operating on the continent. And Pfizer expects to generate about $15 billion, or about a quarter of its total revenue this year, from the sale of its COVID-19 vaccine developed with German partner BioNTech. Now, the drug maker is striving to deliver 2 billion doses of the vaccine in 2021. Pfizer has supplied about 65 million doses globally and 29 million doses to the United States as of January 31st. It expects to supply 200 million doses to the U.S. government by the end of May. Meanwhile, Emirates Airline plans to make daily deliveries of coronavirus vaccines to countries with low storage capacities. It is part of an initiative to accelerate global distribution of jabs. Now, the Middle East's largest carrier will use both its cargo and passenger fleets to deliver vaccines to countries without the means to stockpile those vaccines. And finally, Ford Motors will plow about $1 billion into a plant in South Africa. This will be the biggest ever investment in the country, even as the car maker scales back in other regions, including Brazil and Europe. Now, the upgrades to the Silverton plant near the capital, Pretoria, will boost the site's annual capacity by almost a fifth to 200,000 units. That will create about 1,200 direct jobs. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we are heading into a short break now, still coming up on the show. Ghana's economic growth is projected to hit 4.8% this year. And several African nations stand to benefit from a $12 billion COVID-19 fund.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra Nairobi. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Well, let's head to Tanzania now. The country's largest financial services provider, CRDB Bank, has cemented its market leadership position with a quite impressive financial performance. It posted a $101 million pre-tax profit in 2020. The growth represents a 35% jump from $75 million, which it reported back in 2019. Well, Group CEO and Managing Director Abdul Majid Nsekela attributes the sustained performance to ongoing transformations that have unlocked the bank's abilities. Well, let's get the story behind those numbers. We're now joined by CEO of CRDB Bank and Chairman of Tanzania's Bankers Association, Abdul Majid Nsekela himself. Great to have you on the show with us, Mr. Nsekela. Now, of course, 2019 was quite a tough year, a year of many uncertainties in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite this, CRDB did see a profit before tax jump about 35% in 2019. Now, you have pointed to strategic reforms implemented over the last 2 years. Give us some insight into that strategy that helped you navigate through that crisis period.
Thank you very much for setting this time for us. And as you said initially, 2019 was a very challenging year, crossed over to 2020. But we are very happy to see the result which we have achieved in 2020. This is not a surprise, basically. In the last 2 years, we have gone on a transformation journey with the aim of improving efficiency, but also changing the way we offer service to our customers. Most of our focus in 2020, 2019, and 2020 has been more of digitizing our processes and digitizing our services, but moving away from bricks and mortar philosophy to more alternative channel. We have accelerated our agents banking, coming from 7,000 in 2019 up to 20,000 in 2020. It's a remarkable growth of our distribution channel, which is a cost effective. However, given the crisis we had in 2020 coming from 2019, the focus also was to focus on our own customers, looking what are the affected sectors. As we have seen, most of the country being locked down, some sector being affected, and for example, the tourist sector. So what we did is to be close to our customers, to see what are their challenges and how do we support them, to maintain their operations as they are going through a tough time, but also looking on the alternative solution on how we offer services. Given the health condition which was explained in terms of distancing, working from home, that means most of our customers were away from the banking halls. And that what we did is to offer a digitization of most of our services. And that has given us edge on what we see as the performance of today. The other thing is to see what could be the solutions, because pandemic came up with the option in terms of challenges, but also brought some opportunities in the health sector.
Well, certainly looks like we've lost his connection there. We'll try get it back during the course of the show. Oh, looks like he is back. Mr. Nsekela, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So now let's just shift focus now. You talked a lot about capitalizing on the opportunities. Let's take a look at the operating environment, was you also say the favorable operating environment was a huge plus for your business. Recently, we saw the Bank of Tanzania ordering banks to slash their costs. For example, the central bank said cost-to-income ratios must be below 55% by the end of 2022. They also talked about freezing dividends and bonus payments. How will you see this impacting the business of banking in Tanzania going forward?
For me, I think this is all about efficiency, and it gives a challenge to most of the leadership in the market to think differently. How do you continue performing better to make sure that investors still earn their dividends within the prescribed parameters? When you talk about cost-to-income ratio, which is around 55%, we have seen it's possible. However, there is a fundamental need for most of the banks to digitize their services. So the circular just came out, and for me, I think what I see is expressing about efficiency, stability, and ensure that the sector is healthy enough to continue accelerating the growth.
And of course, the bank also said non-performing loans must be below 5% of your books. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, I think that is achievable because 5% is still high. According to the sector entirely is around 10%, but it has gone down significantly. When you speak on specific for CRDB case, we are now around 4.1%, coming all the way from 9%. The measure we have taken has actually bear the fruits into that. And now, in terms of productivity, processes, being able to do a proper underwritings and ensure that our processes are fully automated and the control is placed. But predictive measure to identify potential loans which are either or non-performing or not performing well. From BOT perspective, the way they have tried to advise banks is to remain keen facilities. For CRDB, we are doing things differently. We are now moving on customer solution-based lending. When I say customer solution-based lending, it's moving away from traditional and structured financing framework, where you look in from the supplier point of view, the borrower, and the buyer. And we have seen positive results by doing so. And that will be our area of focus. But the other area we have navigated is to see how do we structure solutions for segment risk like women. We have come up with women solutions because it's the biggest sector, very trusted segment. But SME is an opportunity area where we have to focus more. So the directive from Central Bank is, I will take it positively, but it has to challenge management and executives, how we manage bank, how we manage cost, continue expanding, and digital will be the way.
Well, we do have to leave it there, sir, because we are experiencing some technical issues with your link. But thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Of course, that was Mr. Abdul Majid Nseleka. He is the CEO of Tanzania's largest lender, CRDB Bank. Well, let's turn our attention now to Ghana. The country's economy has begun to recover after taking a hit last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Ratings agency Fitch has projected a growth rate of 4.8% for the country. But economists are warning that the threat of a second wave of COVID-19 infections could restrict the country's gains. Here's CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reporting from Accra.
Ghana's central bank says the economy is seeing a rebound, with consumer and business confidence levels back where they were before the COVID-19 pandemic. Ratings agencies Fitch and Moody's have projected a strong economic growth for Ghana. Economists say that's based on several factors.
African continental free trade is a factor given the conditions and the terms within the agreement. Again, you realize that because of the COVID, most investments are shifting to gold and some commodities.
As Ghana's economy tries to bounce back after the shocks caused by the pandemic, The government faces a high fiscal deficit and rising debt. Moody's is projecting debt to GDP ratio to hit 80% by the end of this year.
The balancing of our debt portfolio as against ensuring favorable livelihood for the people in the economy is something that's going to be quite challenging for policymakers.
The government is looking to rein in spending to narrow the fiscal deficit. However, that could prove difficult because it has to also deal with the ongoing pandemic response, including the buying of vaccines.
As Ghana's COVID-19 infections surge, the country risks going through a second lockdown. But that could be bad for Ghana's economy, which has more than 80% of the workforce operating in the informal space. The government hopes to limit the spread of infections with the reintroduction of restrictions on special gatherings, so it doesn't have to get to the point of shutting down the economy. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Well, let's stay in West Africa. The Central Bank of Nigeria has been reacting to a recent report by global ratings agency Fitch. It criticized the Apex Bank for repeatedly financing the federal government's budget deficit. Now, the central bank governor says the ratings agency is wrong and that the central bank is acting within its mandate to stabilize an economy that has been battered by the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more on that story.
The Fitch report had been heavily critical of the Central Bank of Nigeria, saying by financing the government, the Apex Bank's action could trigger economic instability and weaken its own balance sheet. Responding directly to the comment, the Central Bank governor says the rating agency got it all wrong.
Let it be known, first and foremost, that the Central Bank of Nigeria is banker to government. Second, let it be known that the Central Bank of Nigeria is a lender of last resort, not just to government, but also even to our banks when they run into short-term liquidity problems.
Mr. Emefiele went on to explain that at a time when the country is confronting the global COVID-19 pandemic and an economic recession, it was incumbent on the central bank to do all it can to help stimulate economic recovery and growth. But the Fitch report had also noted that the central bank's financing of the government predates COVID-19, citing another instance between 2015 and 2016. However, the central bank governor also has an explanation for that.
In 2015-2016, you all recall that there was a global crisis which resulted in a massive drop in the price of petroleum products, crude oil. Like you all know, unfortunately, Nigeria is a country that will celebrate when crude price is high, but will sneeze when the price of crude goes down. In this case, the price of crude went down, and we sneezed. We sneezed because revenue came down. When revenue came down, government became incapable to finance all its obligations. If government cannot finance all its obligations, I think it would be irresponsible on the part of the Central Bank of Nigeria as a lender of last resort not to support the federal government.
But analysts say while the central bank's argument is plausible, its financing of the government, if not carefully managed, could worsen the country's inflation rate, which stands at a 32-month high of 15.75%.
The principle of being the lender of last resort is an argument that we can sustain or support. But there should be a limit to the lending. Ways and means financing of deficits is not good for the health of the economy. This is because ways and means financing is what we call high-powered money. It is highly inflationary. So ideally, it should be the very last resort.
The central bank says what it's done by financing government deficit is essentially what countries across the world are doing to help their economies absorb the shock of the COVID-19 pandemic. It says without its intervention, it would have been very difficult for the country's economy to cope at this time. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, the World Bank says it has committed $12 billion to assist the DRC and 7 other African nations to access COVID-19 vaccines. The funds will be dispersed as low-interest loans to ensure that the African nations are not left behind in the rollout of these vaccines. Here's Chris Ochamringa with more from Kinshasa.
The World Bank Group president announced the availability of $12 billion for African countries to purchase COVID-19 vaccines at a virtual meeting. The funds will be given as grants or low-cost loans to Ghana, Ethiopia, Niger, Mozambique, Cape Verde, Eswatini, Tunisia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The bank has urged other African countries that have not yet requested for its support to do so. The DRC, like many African countries, is depending on COVAX, a global initiative that seeks to ensure equitable access to the vaccines.
I think the country expressed its interest to be part of the COVAX that is supported by WHO, and to make sure that the country will also get the vaccine and make sure that we can, using this vaccine, vaccinate around 20% of the population. But this is still in a process, and we don't know exactly when the vaccine can get in country. I heard that probably around April, May or June, but we don't know exactly when we will get the vaccine, and we still don't know which vaccine we will choose.
The bank's support to African countries comes as wealthy nations have already purchased more than half of the doses of leading COVID-19 vaccines. The World Health Organization has urged rich countries to stop hoarding vaccine supplies and start supporting poorer countries to access them. According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control, the cost of vaccinating 60% of Africa's 1.3 billion people would be between $10 and $15 billion. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
You are watching Global Business Africa. We're going to take a short break now, still to come. China calls for closer relations with Joe Biden's administration. And Europe is under fire for its decision to implement new curbs on vaccine exports.
Holding gun. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant.
Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live, Find your voice.
And to some other headlines this hour, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has eased some restrictions imposed due to coronavirus, including lifting an unpopular ban on alcohol sales. Now, some of the restrictions that have been relaxed include the opening of public places, such as beaches and parks. Faith-based gatherings will also now be permitted, subject to health protocols. And in Zimbabwe, the country will have access to Chinese COVID-19 vaccine soon. China's ambassador to Zimbabwe, Guo Chaoshun, said on Twitter that it will be one of the first 14 nations to receive the doses. The Chinese Foreign Ministry also adds that Beijing plans to help 38 more developing nations acquire those vaccines. And Nigeria's government says it has ordered 41 million doses of vaccines from the African Union. It says this is part of its plans to vaccinate at least 70% of its more than 200 million population by 2022. The doses are a combination of Pfizer, AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccines and are meant to arrive in the country by the end of April. And that's a look at our headlines. Well, let's get you some international news now. The head of foreign affairs for the Communist Party of China has called for the restoration of good China-US ties. Yang Jiechi said this in his first speech to the American audience since US President Joe Biden took office. Our reporter Dai Kai has more.
As the new U.S. administration moved into the White House nearly 2 weeks ago, China's top diplomat says the relationship between China and the U.S. stands at a defining moment.
China and the United States are the world's two largest economies, as well as prominent members of the UN Security Council. Effective cooperation between the two has a direct bearing on the well-being of all people, as well as peace, development, and global prosperity.
Yan said for the past few years, the Trump administration adopted misguided policies against China, plunging the relationship into its most difficult period since the establishment of the diplomatic ties. He added attempts from the U.S. side seeking decoupling and a potential Cold War have seriously damaged China-U.S. ties and fundamental interests. At this critical juncture, Yan said it's time for the two countries' relationship to get on a more predictable and constructive track.
China is prepared to work with the United States to move the relationship forward along the track of no conflict, no confrontation, mutual respect, and win-win cooperation for the well-being of both countries and peoples.
Yan said opening up has been the key driving force behind China's rapid development, and the country will remain fully committed to that fundamental policy. In the meantime, he also pointed out that China will continue to stand firm to defend its sovereignty, security, and development interests. Dakai CGTN, Beijing.
Meanwhile, in Europe, the clash over vaccine delivery delays has now ensnarled Brussels' top brass. They've been trying to clean up a blunder over new curbs on vaccine exports. It has pitted the European Commission president against one of her top deputies. Here's Tony Waterman explaining from Brussels.
It is a very rare occasion when the daily European Commission press conference leaves journalists on the edge of their seat. But Monday was that rare exception as the president's office tried to deflect blame for an embarrassing U-turn on vaccine export controls, pointing the finger instead at her executive vice president, Valdis Dombrovskis. Now, Ursula von der Leyen's chief spokesperson said that as the trade commissioner, the new regulation was Dombrovskis' responsibility and that his office took the lead in this new regulation. Europe has come under heavy fire for its decision to implement new curbs on vaccine exports in the middle of a global pandemic, now requiring companies to get permission before they can ship jabs outside of the bloc. Northern Ireland was initially included in this plan, which would have required Brussels to invoke a nuclear option in the Brexit agreement that could have led to checks along the Irish border. This sparked outrage in Dublin, Belfast, and London, all of which said they were blindsided, and the Commission was forced to make a hasty retreat, the latest misstep in what many view as a bungled vaccine rollout. Ursula von der Leyen's spokesperson saying Monday that the mistake was caught early and that only the Pope is infallible.
In my country, we have a saying, seul le pape est infaillible. You know, mistakes can happen along the way. The important thing is that you recognize them early on, in this case, so early that it was before the decision was finalized, and that you correct them.
The mea culpa comes as the Commission chalked up a small victory on the vaccine front. Pfizer-BioNTech announcing that they will deliver an additional 75 million doses of their vaccine in the second quarter of this year. This piggybacks on AstraZeneca's 9 million additional doses, but it still falls way short of the jabs promised and needed in the first quarter as the pandemic rages on and new, more transmissible variants of coronavirus begin to dominate. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Brussels.
Now, the popular short video app Douyin has entered China's massive digital payments market with a new mobile service. It is looking to tap into the sector, which is already dominated by giants Alipay and WeChat Pay. Well, Zhang Xishuan finds out how new players are planning to grab a slice of the pie.
With 60% of its e-commerce live streams held on Douyin, Shanghai-based Xieya last year sold 2 billion yuan worth of products online, double what it made a year earlier. A company that sells that much needs a fast way to get its money in the bank, and Xieya thinks Douyin's exclusive mobile payment system offers just that.
In 2019, all the e-commerce payments on Douyin had to be sent via third-party platforms like Taobao or Tmall. But after the COVID outbreak, Douyin built its own closed-loop business, allowing users to pay right on the app. Merchants have a withdrawal payment cycle of between 7 and 14 days on Douyin, so the launch of Douyin Pay gives us a financial closed loop, which is good for the merchants because it could offer a more flexible withdrawal period.
Douyin's new payment service allows users to link cards from 10 banks to tip live streaming hosts, purchase paid content, and also buy stuff from the app's e-commerce offers. Douyin previously used only WeChat Pay and Alipay, but now its payments are processed by UL Pay, a Hubei-based firm that Douyin's owner ByteDance reportedly applied to buy in 2018. Now that Douyin can boast 600 million daily active users, experts say the timing was right to launch its own payment service because it will help cement the loyalty of its user base.
Internet users have relatively low loyalty to platforms, but payment is special. For users, merchants, and everyone in the supply chain, the cost of their switching between different payment systems is very large. So a payment service can help platforms keep their users stable and loyal and avoid their transferring to rival platforms.
ByteDance said in a statement to us that Douyin Pay will supplement the existing major payment options in the distribution of virtual wrap packets at the upcoming Spring Festival Gala, one of the most watched events of the year in China. In that case, the new payment system will have its first exposure to the wider public. But would the users choose to pay with Douyin Pay instead of with others they have been using for so long?
I tip live streamers, or with Alipay. I won't use Douyin Pay unless it's convenient and has discounts, or if it offers new functions.
I use WeChat and Alipay to buy stuff on Douyin. If there were discounts for Douyin Pay users, I might try it, but otherwise it wouldn't be worth the inconvenience of linking my cards to it. I'm used to Alipay and WeChat Pay.
So what can new players do to attract the attention of users away from the payment giants?
New players should find innovative technologies to give users a better payment experience. For example, they might pay with eye or voice recognition, and they might come up with new applications in cooperation with physical stores.
According to a report by Huachuang Securities, China's mobile payment market was expected to have surpassed 600 trillion yuan in 2020 and will continue to enjoy high-speed growth. And Douyin is far from the only company trying to move into digital payments. Bilibili has just registered its own payment domain name. Pinduoduo has just acquired its payment trademark, and in-app payments are already available for Meituan and Didi. All the new entrants could be well positioned to take advantage of the government's crackdown on monopoly practices in the country's internet finance sector. Zhang Shixuan, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
And on that note, let's take a look at commodity markets today. A quick look at precious metals. Spot gold fell over 1% today, attracting less investor interest over those silver jitters. Meanwhile, silver fell more than 5% as a buying spree amongst small investors that took prices to a near 8-year high yesterday appeared to fizzle out today amid some profit taking. Oil prices soared over 2% after major crude producers showed they were reining in output in line with their commitments. Well, let's take a short break now, still to come. An eco-friendly entrepreneur uses an unlikely source to help build a cleaner Kenya. And retailers, along with manufacturers, have 3 months to stop production and usage of single-use plastic bags.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Now, Nigeria's government says it is close to attaining self-sufficiency in rice production, producing nearly 7 million metric tons of rice every year. But experts say more needs to be done to close the gap between production and consumption of rice. Well, CGTN's Phili Haza in Abuja, the nation's capital, tells us more on this.
Blessed Wakama has been selling rice at this retail market in Abuja for more than a decade. He says the sales of local rice have improved within the past 5 years.
We've seen more people invest in the production of local rice. I think it's largely because the government has since restricted foreign rice importation.
According to the Ministry of Agriculture, the gap between the country's rice production and what it consumes yearly is now only 500,000 metric tons. The government has banned rice imports across land borders for 5 years and kept a heavy 70% tariff on imports coming through ports. Through various initiatives, the government has increased credit facilities to local farmers. But experts say more needs to be done for Nigeria to attain self-sufficiency in rice production.
Besides even getting funding into this space, we still have to face the issue of farmers' herders clash, that is even setting us even back. So we need to address a number of issues before we get to that point where we say we are self-sufficient. We need to develop infrastructure, roads, transport system that can ship this product from point of production to where it will be sold and consumed at the least cost.
The Rice Processors Association of Nigeria has also urged the government to criminalize the sale of foreign rice in the country. They allege that the presence of foreign rice in the market will jeopardize the efforts of the government in promoting local rice consumption.
President Buhari has expressed optimism that with ongoing interventions by his administration, local rice production will continue to increase, and in no time the markets will be flooded with quality local rice, enough for the entire populace.
Experts say that's something that could have huge economic implications for the country.
Right now we consume a lot of rice, and if we're able to scale up production to the point that we become self-sufficient, that means we're able to produce more than we need and have excess to ship out, then, FX will just flow into the country, and then, we would have got to the promised land at that point.
And if Nigeria gets to that point, rice dealers like Blessed could make better sales of local rice and even export some to customers in other parts of the world. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Well, let's head to Kenya now, where an entrepreneur has developed a machine that recycles discarded plastic waste into paving stones for use in construction projects. Well, Nzambi Mate's factory keeps plastic out of landfills and offers a cheaper alternative to conventional concrete paving slabs. Here's Terry Wangari with the story.
Nzambi Mate is the founder of Nairobi-based Genje Makers. The company turns polyethylene and polypropylene waste plastic into plastic bricks.
First of all, our product is almost 5 to 7 times stronger than the concrete, and this is because of the basic material structure of the brick itself. Our pavers, because they're made out of recycled plastic, and plastic is polymerous in nature, or rather it's thread-like. So therefore it doesn't have a lot of pocket holes, therefore making it less brittle compared to concrete. So that's why it doesn't break very easily.
Mate is a materials engineer by profession. Being a champion of environmental awareness, she built the machines used to produce the bricks. With this passion, she sought to take matters into her own hands.
I was tired of being in the sidelines. You're just there waiting for someone to sort the plastic issue. You're just waiting for the government or the municipality or just someone else other than yourself. So that was the first driver. And then the other thing was, it was almost out of sheer curiosity to see, can this happen? Because I had seen it happening in different parts of the world, and I knew it could be replicated here in Kenya. We knew how to make one brick. So we needed to know, if we had to bring this product to the market, we needed to know how to make 1,000 or 5,000, because one project cannot be just one brick. So after figuring out how to make one brick, now the next step was how to make 1,000. Making 1,000, we need machines.
Genje Makers produces 1,500 bricks per day. The cost of the grey variety is $8 per square meter. Mate's factory has recycled 20 tons of waste plastic after she founded her factory in 2017.
It's affordable because we are in Kenya, and Kenya and in the larger part of Africa, being a mass market, of course, you have to be not only sustainable but also affordable, and hence the triple threat: stronger, lighter, and affordable.
The Ministry of Environment and Forestry says Kenya produces 600,000 tons of plastic bottles annually, of which 400,000 tons are used locally, with only 9% of it recycled. For Mate, she hopes to add another bigger production line that would at most triple their capacity. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Meanwhile, in Tanzania, the government has issued a 3-month ultimatum for retailers and manufacturers to freeze production and usage of single-use plastic bags. Now, despite being banned on environmental grounds nearly 2 years ago, the government claims a huge number of illegal plastic packaging material is still being made. Here's CGTN's Daniel Kijo with more.
They started as a tool for convenience, but plastic bags have turned into an environmental nightmare. The Tanzanian government had issued a ban in 2019 that saw the country start eliminating single-use plastic from its economy. But now, 2 years later, the minister responsible says despite the ban, there has been an increase in illegal plastic packaging in the country.
Using the authority I have, I am now giving a grace period of 3 months to ensure that all substandard plastic packaging is no longer in the market.
The plastic bags such as plastic packaging, which the National Bureau of Standards disqualified for not meeting state requirements, are being reproduced in different volumes, sizes and styles. The only packaging allowed has to meet strict government standards and have manufacturer's seal. The government says this recent rise in plastic bag production is dangerous for the environment.
The plastic waste is now everywhere, in our streets, our villages, in our markets, hence reducing the progress we had made in fighting plastic waste.
Manufacturing and distributing illegal plastic bags in Tanzania can lead to a 2-year prison sentence or a fine of up to $400,000. Anyone found carrying a bag can be subjected to a fine of $13. The exact number of fines issued has not been revealed by the government. Worldwide, over 127 countries have introduced some sort of plastic ban legislation. Africa has 34 of these countries, followed by Europe with 29. Despite banning plastic packaging 2 years ago, Tanzania has still continued to fight against a pollution monster of its own creation. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
And before we leave you today, here's a quick look at Africa's currencies. South Africa's rand edged up early today. It was supported by talks on a new U.S. stimulus package and progress in local coronavirus vaccine purchases. Now, traders say the rand's attractive yield compared to other emerging market currencies continues to shield it from being negatively affected by signs of a weak local economy. In Nigeria, the naira appreciated at the official NAFEX window, and that's despite dollar supply in the country dropping by 19.8%. It hovered at around 394 naira per dollar at the black market. And at the black market, the rate remained stable at 480 naira per dollar. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.